Order.
I got a small version of that, and I was like, can you not put
Alright.
chicken on it? And
We're calling this meeting to order at 5:36. I recognize that I am present, Ilse is present, Justin is present, Michael is present, Scott is present, Ryan is present, Zane is present, and Nithya is present. Visual Hank working, give it a second. So first up, we're gonna wait until the guy comes, but if you guys wanna go ahead and pull up the agenda, it was emailed out to all of you. No changes have been made since. We have FPO 126-1920, which is the change to our budgetary statutes. Then after that, we're diving straight into the off-campus to finish that out. As far as off-campus, I have.
Yeah, he's just using the restroom. Did you see her come in?
Yeah, but.
Did she just dip?
After that, I have rationales for all the neither section. I'm still working on the competition one, so I want to get your feedback on that as well. We'll kind of go through it just to prove all that stuff. I'll move on to on-campus and start looking through those, at which point I'll probably turn it over to Tori and Courtney since they have the most updated sheets, which we share with you. During that time, I'll finish up the competition explanations so we can get through them. So ideally, all off-campus legislation will be signed and voted on by today, and we'll get a very decent crack at on-campus. From what I understand for on-campus, there's already several events that are over the $33 per head limit, over the $12 per food limit, events that we would just normally would not fund, stuff like that. So, Victoria and Courtney are really taking the deep dive into on-campus while I've been finishing up the other sections. So, thanks so much.
You're welcome. Your thermostat isn't registering, so it'll probably just be a little cozy in here this evening. I have to put in a work request for that, so unfortunately there's really nothing I can do about it right now. FM, all their guys are already gone, so sorry folks.
That's all right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks,
Yeah.
AJ.
Take care, have a good night.
If anybody feels like lightheaded or actually feels like they're not gonna be well, speak up and we can try to figure something out.
Call recess at one
Yeah.
time for a bit. I mean, even just walking outside, just have to get
It's like 7 to 7.
Did they just have you to go until like I don't know?
Just make sure you drink your water. All right, so that's our agenda for today. Is there a motion on the floor?
Move to approve the agenda. Second.
All in favor? Oh, wait. Yeah. All opposed? Motion carries. Minutes will be reviewed at the next meeting. We're going to go ahead and open up FBL 126-20. I yield the floor to Justin.
So this is same legislation I introduced Tuesday. So at the bottom you see which changes to the guiding docs we'll be making, specifically event areas, articles heading up the budgetary policy. And this is under the restricted in funding. Restricted funding for SGA Finance Board. And 10.4.4 and 10.4.5 are implementation that we would be amending to our statute. Any questions?
I have a question, I guess how exactly are you defining general body meetings and something like that?
I'm gonna allow that for future finance boards to decide, so that they're not restricted in any way. So even if clubs say that something's not a general body meeting, but the board deems it to be, they're still allowed to deny funding.
Any other questions?
I think we should try and make it a little bit clearer in 10.4.5. Can I make some suggestions and we can vote on them?
Like what?
Could you comment this?
Yeah. Would you like to move to amend at this time?
Yeah, move to amend.
All right, there's a motion to amend the document. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Please state your amendment.
I'm just gonna put it in if you guys can.
I was gonna ask if we put in suggesting mode when you're doing your changes. Oh, yeah, you are. You're just not showing it. Very well.
Justin? How does that clarify? I don't understand.
How's that what?
How does that clarify? What was, like, not clear that does clarify?
Oh, I think it just mostly provides the finance board with more discretionary power over whether or not we deem an event to be something, a recruitment event or not. I think that's just clarifying language. So it's ensuring most of the power still stays with finance board about whether it's a recruitment event, and organizations don't get really a decision about whether or not it's considered to be recruitment or not. So I think that's more of the.
It could also be worded differently, like if it's the finance board shall not fund any event whose primary purpose is recruitment, but I feel like this gives more discretion to us, like Justin was trying to give.
Justin, I have a question for you. Are you including events that are like welcome events as a recruitment event, or more so like a intro to the club?
So,
Do you see what I'm asking?
I think so. So like during the summer, we got requests from like certain clubs that are like trying to. I think it was from Crew actually that were trying to like host events to welcome like transfer and fresh students specifically to their club.
Do you think that would be considered recruitment, or do you think that would be its own, like an actually 10.4.6?
I think if it's an event that's specifically like geared towards like introducing people to like your club specifically rather than like the campus as a whole, then that would be like a recruitment.
Okay.
I think to follow up on my other question, it's kind of unclear who is deeming the recruitment event to be such.
The finance board would be.
The finance board shall not fund any events deemed to be a recruitment event.
I
understand your
think
question.
I think Ryan's right. Like you should add any events deemed by the finance board to be a recruitment event.
Finance board should not fund any events deemed by the
And you
board to
put
be a
the-
recruitment event.
For your suggestion, I know I'm like I did.
But just type under your, like,
Make sure it's in suggesting them.
In the top right, where it says editing, remember.
Yes.
That way no one can be like, well, I deem that it's not a recruitment event.
The point of our motion is clear and concise language, so the more specific we make, the less wiggle room clubs have to argue against us. Gonna go towards the top, another change that I would personally like to make, just in the language of the application to legislature policy.
Don't touch me.
To add in this, the first let it be resolved should be say that this is amendment to legislature statute, so.
What do you think about the last part of that? It's like a sentence.
So just adding in this line right here. Just that the legislation actually does indeed change.
New members.
Yeah, rather than
But that's just a
topic specific.
Let's go back down. It says for any changes.
New members of what?
So I don't think Justin was meaning new members of the organization. I think he specifically meant new students. I don't want to talk for you.
It's like a regular.
What's the issue?
I feel like freshmen and transfer students for any student organization is oddly specific. I was trying to generalize it out to new members of the organization.
It sounds like a pending clause
So-
close to the recruitment.
This is simply like set examples that I saw which were happening over the summer. It's not like supposed to be definitively it, but like just events like that, which are like specifically trying to like recruit people towards your club, like as I was telling Tori.
Yeah, so it's not new members of the organization, it's new students to the university.
As a recruitment tactic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Freshman and transfer students for any student organization. So should you say what you just said then instead of?
Welcoming new students to the university.
Maybe it's the
What
one.
event specifically did you see where it was events targeted towards specifically freshman and transfer students?
So I remember it was crew and Caribbean Student Council that had events that was like cookouts for like new students getting involved in a club, but like we would have these like meet and greets to like introduce them to like not just the university, but like what we do on campus. And so it's like those type of events.
Alright, that makes sense.
What about that then?
Maybe it's the welcoming word that's kind of weird with it. Like instead of welcoming, maybe it should just be direct, like targeting new students for recruitment purposes.
You mean,
Like instead of saying events welcoming new students,
okay.
It's
I
just
see what you're
targeting
saying.
new, targeting specifically new students to university, comma, for the purposes of. It would be like, well, we're not welcome to the university, we're just saying, as an event that you guys are free to come to. This is basically, the board deems it that, I think this event is targeted towards first year students, that the board can manage funding based on current statutes. Alright. Are there any other amendments anyone would like to attach to this motion?
I don't like targeting.
What do you think we should use?
Direct new students.
Recruiting?
As well as events with which new students would be the primary target.
I think
Or you just gonna
primary
separate it?
audience, maybe? Primary audience, like,
as well as events whose
could we just say
primary objective.
other,
Focusing.
other welcoming events?
Focusing or focus
Bring on.
towards recruiting new students to the club.
To be honest, you probably could just leave it at the finance board shall not fund any events deemed by the finance board as a recruitment event.
Yeah, I second.
Yeah.
Since it's this is including but not limited to.
Yeah.
So then,
I mean, I'd like to try to get there on your own.
Alright, so 3 changes added on are an amendment to the beginning section letting you know that it's effective legislative statutes, amendment to section 10.4.5 beginning, indicating that this event is deemed by the finance board, not just deemed. And then another amendment to strike the sections including but not limited to materials for participating in both events as well as other events. And recruiting/targeting new students to university for purposes of recruitment, freshmen and transfer students for any student organization. Are there any objections to the 3 amendments as stated? Hearing no objections, with that being said, is there a motion to approve the amendments?
Move to approve the amendments to SB 126-19.
All in favor, please raise your hand now. All opposed? Motion carries. Go ahead and make those changes. I got it. Alright, with that being said, is there a motion on the floor regarding FBL 126-1920 as amended?
move to approve as we go 126, 19, 20, as submitted.
Second.
All in favor, please raise your hand now. All opposed? So that's 7-4, 0 against, 1 abstaining, 1 not present, motion carries. Alright,
One is not
alright, we are going to first move into the final vote explanations. We're gonna start with, so mock trial and, Model UN both met with me yesterday to talk about discussing their budgets. The decisions I made, mock trial requested that all of their funding that the allocate them be put into the Great Chicago Fire Invitational. Let me pull up these numbers so you can see what I'm talking about. Oh god, my heart. These numbers are not good for me. I get a heart attack usually. 21. So as for the competition, mock trial voted they wanted all of their funding placed into the Great Chicago Fire Invitational. Considering that the cost per person was, where is it? 586 with the amount they had to spend. Basically they could send 6 members with money left over. They could send 7 members for the total amount of $4,100 and I believe $36, somewhere around that level. So I opted as the chair to over allocate by approximately just under $100 so they could send that 7th person. They were less than 100 away, it didn't make sense not to. So that's my rationale behind that.
What is it? What's the final number for mock trial?
Final number for mock trial is sending 7 people for a total of $4,106.20. No over allocation of approximately $12.
Right in the bank.
Yeah.
And for UN?
So for Model UN was slightly different. They wanted to send all their money towards their event that they were holding for in New York, their big month conference. The numbers you can see here, the total to send all of them was to send 8 out of the 16 was $4,385 versus that total request. It's about a $290 difference, but that's the same based on the total cost of the event. We would either have around $240 to $250 left over by funding at 7. Versus $290 over by funding at 8. I saw no reason to let that money just sit there. I figured it wouldn't hurt if we over allocated by 8 for about $290. So that's what I chose, but if you guys have any objections to that, please let me know now. We can hold a formal vote on their funding.
So we're over allocating by $302.28?
Yep, pretty much.
That's fine.
This was the difference for one more.
Yeah. Because if we send 7 people, then we get about 250 back, I believe was the number, or between 200 and 250. So I figured that was a large enough amount that it didn't make sense for that to just go to waste, right?
Which block are you actually looking at right now?
Oh, this is the Model UN over allocation that was spent. This is the difference level. This is the total amount they requested, and this is how much we had available to allocate. So are there any objections to the over allocations for mock trial? Hearing no objections, are there any objections to the over allocation for Model UN? Hearing no objections, in a moment we'll move on to the final vote on that. But first I want to share my spring precedents with you guys. This is the document I've been updating. This is going to be for the off-campus request for neither. I have to make the adjustments to the SurveyMonkey, which I will do shortly. But I wanted to get the final vote numbers for you guys. So we already discussed and determined these. I just have our rationale laid out for them. So the main neither section are rationales that organizations were funded at a per person cost. The decision to fully fund individuals opposed to line items was made after feedback from organizations in the fall semester. Many organizations expressed frustration that students could not make up the extra costs of travel and lodging. And because of this feedback, the finance board decided to fully fund as many individuals as possible. There's a total of $8,889.48 in requests from 5 different organizations, with only $1,873 allocated. Because of this, each organization was given roughly $374.63. These correspond with in the off-campus request going from top to bottom. So the first one was the scuba club. So the rationale I wrote out for that was that Due to the close proximity of the National Aquarium to the UMBC campus and the availability of other officers at the aquarium, the board voted against funding for a bus for 7 hours. Also, due to limited funding and not all tickets could be paid for, the board voted to fund for 15 people to go. That way, the group pricing could still be reached and provide that discount as requested. Any objections or changes that anyone would like to make to that? All right. Next up was the rifle and pistol club trip. The only rationale I had was the top section will stay for all of these. These will just be add-ons for each of the organizations. I just wrote, due to the low cost of spent, the board voted to fully fund the rifle and pistol range trip. Pretty simple. They did get fully funded. Next one would be the rocket launch trip. And I said, due to limited funding available, the board was only able to fund for 6 people to go to the event. These 6 people were fully funded in terms of lodging and travel based on the per person cost as indicated by your budget request. Pretty simple. Next one was the rock climbing club's spring break trip. And I said, basically the same beginning part, which was that due to limited funding available, the board was only able to fund for 6 people to go to this event. These 6 people were fully funded in terms of lodging and travel based on the per person cost as indicated in the budget request. However, because of supplies, I wrote the board also voted against funding for the supplies requested as the request for safety equipment. The board was against funding these because there's the risk that if the equipment fails, the university could be held responsible. That's what Candace informed me of. So that's the reason why she was also against that. And I figured that was a decent rationale to move through. But if you guys would like to make changes to that or would like to strike that, I'm open to hearing that this time.
I just like.
Go ahead.
Do you know? Do they have a locker room on campus? In the art space.
You can check.
Sure. Yes. No. Very good. Take my chair.
I just didn't know if the storage issue could be
I'm out of my street.
given as well.
I mean, they're not promised you a year.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and we did it based on need with the renewal.
So that's another one you can say to do to the.
I don't think you need to put that in there because someone could easily say, I have no problem keeping it in my closet at my apartment or something.
Yeah, but.
You could put in that clause saying,
Yeah, I feel
like, due to the lack of university secured spaces, that the equipment could be stored in.
Probably
Lack of permanent university secured spaces. Scott, go ahead.
They don't
I
have.
feel like there was more to the decision than just that factor, so should.
Which part?
Not fund, the reasoning for not funding the equipment.
I mean, the main one was the storage.
Yeah, the main one was storage, so I can go ahead and put that in.
I would just word it,
In addition
to explain that about making sure the equipment is properly kept and stored. And like university space or something, not like on the flight member or something.
I can't spell properly.
autocorrect. Permanent storage.
Alright. How's this look?
I would keep in the other parts too.
Yeah, I would just. look
Just
at
having
the
that
board
condition.
Also.
So, all boys also against funding?
Yeah. And the final one was the meditation at UMBC. Oh wait, is everyone okay with number 4 as is? Everyone good? Alright, the last one was the meditation retreat. We just listed that finance board president prohibits the use of finance board funds to be used for donations, therefore the board could not fund the registration fee as requested. But everything else was funded, so I thought there wasn't anything more to add to that. objections? Alright, with that being said, you mind if we hold our formal vote for all of these requests? Hold on, let me go make one. I thought I had this, but I don't. I apologize.
Before we keep the vote, we can go over to the final funding amount.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do right now.
We formed one cover one of like how much they were funded, well, and give us it out as like refunding this like this much for this much per person for like travel registration and then for this many people. Is that was something that caused confusion?
Yeah, I'm working on putting it some place that I'm gonna send off to this. And basically it just says that like, the board, when it comes off campus, would be, you know, they were allocated on a per person basis, below the line funds for each thing, is 100%. So, yes.
Are passing amounts for competitions too?
Yes, we'll be doing that after we finish up the individual explanations for all of this. Okay. So I was looking for the
Looks like it's getting cooler in here.
It does, it feels so much more tolerable.
Say that loud. Alright, so this is our total funding category. FDL 127-1920, which would be the approval of UMBC's off-campus spring 2020 request for the total amount of $499.25. Is there a motion on the floor?
Move to approve the FBL you just.
That'll be 127. 127. Okay, line, but column.
Yeah. 127.
We just passed 126, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were.
147.9 is
Oh, okay, okay.
total fund of competition. Okay.
Yeah. Alright, so there's a motion on the floor for the approval of 127. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please raise your hands now. All opposed? 7-4, 0 against, 1 abstaining, 1 absent. The motion carries. Next is FBL 128-1920, which is approval of the Rifle and Pistol Club's spring 2020 on-campus request or off-campus request for the total of $25.48. Is there a motion?
Move to approve FBL 128.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. 7-0-1-1. Introducing 129-1920, approval of the Astronomy Club's spring 2020 off-campus request for the total of $645.00.
Move to approve FBL 129-1920.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? 7-0-1-1. The motion carries. FBL 130-1920, approval of the Rock Climbing Club's off-campus spring 2020 budget request for the total of $820.00.
Move to approve FDL 130-1920.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? 7-0-1-1. The motion carries. Finally, 131-1920, which is approval of meditation at UMBC's spring 2020 request for the total of $50.
Move to approve FBL 131-1920.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? 7-0-1-1. Motion carries. All right. In the meantime, I'm going to turn it over to Tori to talk about on campus, at least for the main issue that you have, while I finish up the competition with my stuff.
You make it sound like there's only one.
How much time you got?
So first, did you get my text about the FBRs
Yes.
changing? Okay, cool. And that we have to have Bartleby in there. Liam, so we have to have Bartleby in there too.
Yes, we can. Alright,
I would have forgotten until I saw Bartleby on that off-campus thing, and I was like, ooh, that could have been spicy. Took the liberty of going through every single on-campus request against my better judgment, just to scan. I emphasize on scan, like the initial concerns. So, are they over in any amounts per head for food or per head per event by the 12 or 33? Is it a general body meeting? By that, do they actually say yes, it is a general body meeting? I didn't look into it deeper. That is for you all to do, to decide. If it was a recruitment event, if it was a limited funding organization asking for something you wouldn't typically fund from them, if they did not meet with Brit for ECS fees. So by saying that, if they requested any ECS fees, whether it was a big event or a small event, I noted if they didn't have any documentation for that. And then if there was any potentially not funded, so like things that on paper might seem okay, but like there's something weird with their request, I marked those down. And then also any general questions that you should probably be asking orgs about. So one org, they flipped their UMBC attendance and non-UMBC attendance, like in their event description, they're like, we're gonna have 200 UMBC students and only 50 non-UMBC, but they typed it in wrong. So like that's something to reach out to them about. Some groups were renting tablecloths, so is that something that you could provide through Source? Stuff like that. Some groups have a room rental fee on there. No, that's not a thing unless it's like the ballroom, and they're not using the ballroom, it's a lecture hall, so stuff like that. There it is, look how pretty it is. Some groups are just like a cluster of wrong, so they're highlighted in multiple colors. But if it's in red, they didn't meet with Brit. So might not be a conversation for tonight, but that's something you guys might want to talk about too, is how you're going to approach those groups that didn't meet with Brit, like you said that they would have to. What you do with that is up to you. I'm not going to have any input. Do I have ideas? Yes. Am I emotionally invested in any of them? No. But I would suggest going through and cutting the events first that you can't fund based on your precedents, which is anything in purple. So my suggestion would be to do that first, and then go into the ones in greens that have some sort of over the max that you would fund anyway. Did I summarize that pretty well?
Yeah.
Cool.
Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and make a copy of the sheet, put it in the spring 2020 campus stuff. You can work with it as well.
I'm sorry that it's a lot to look at. I didn't know how else to.
It literally took 2 days to do this. You should apologize.
I did take quite a bit.
Thank you, Jordan.
You're welcome.
You're a hero.
Good job, right? Oh, I almost forgave some of this year color codes. Get that on the coffee cup.
Alright, so you guys should now have access to this sheet. If you want to go ahead and start looking through it. While I finish out this competition stuff, I'm going to go ahead and turn over the chair to Justin to lead the discussion in terms of this. It'll be basically going to go through the questions if you want to start going ahead and making those cuts, or if you want to start looking through each of the requests individually, the ones that might need cuts or questions. Personally, I would recommend looking at the problem organizations first, since we know we'll have to deal with them at some point. We might as well deal with them now, and then later we can go through the other ones. So while I finish out these requests, Justin, if you want to go ahead. Thank you so much.
So I guess just in some of the problem or the purple ones?
Anything in that questions category.
Does anyone have any certain feelings of where they would like to start off this session or start looking at?
Let's start with the color.
Which color?
Blue.
Blue?
Because it says potentially not funded, so I'm assuming those are the ones that are gonna go like.
Well, no, those are ones you're probably gonna have more like of your typical banter on, as I'm assuming. like they're, on paper, they look kind of okay, but you might be like, that kind of feels like a recruitment event to me, but it's not specifically stated.
Maybe we should throw green, yeah.
So purple and green are for sure things you're gonna be cutting. Purple would be like the full event, just as something you're not gonna do, like it's a general body meeting, it's a fundraiser, it's a recruitment thing. The green ones mean that they asked for too much based on what your limits are, based on their attendance.
Motion to start with purple.
Motion to start with purple. All right. All those in favor of starting with the purple category? Oh, wait.
You can just, you can just say, are there any objections? If there's no objections, it's not objections.
I know you guys all number hands as general consent, so.
So what number?
We just start with the top, so that'd be 312.
312.
Society positions.
Wait, how was it possible? Wow.
If you look at the FPR,
I'm not like sorting through everything. I just not it's not gonna happen.
So it's 312 in the survey monkey?
Yeah.
Copy.
Which you can take the
I
search.
cannot, it doesn't work.
Yep.
Yeah. You have to go 100%. Scroll down.
I'm right behind it. It works for
it's on
me.
page 2.
You can just put it in. It's not working right now.
Huh? What do you
If you have that text.
So,
312. We're looking at purple. So we're starting with society.
So this is just a general body meeting.
Correct.
We should just cut.
So.
It's to serve pizza and beverages. Right?
So there's also, not that this is what you're working on right now anyway, there's also a lot of groups that aren't on here that on paper, like, it seems okay, but in my opinion, it seems like a lot of pizza, just asking for pizza for meetings.
Yeah.
There should be.
There's one right
And
there.
there's these ones down here, and there's one right here. Oh, you good?
You good? You good? You need a moment?
I'm good. I'm good.
Bless you.
Hi, everyone. If I could quickly have your attention, we have a very special guest with us. I'm going to allow her to introduce herself and explain like her situation and why she's here.
Hi, so I'm Izzy Negro. I'm president of Ethics Bowl, which is an intellectual sport, kind of like debate. And we got an email that said that we are not being considered for funding for next semester, and I just wanted to talk to you guys about that and figure out if there's anything we can do to fix that. I have sort of two big reasons why, and the first being that Ethics Bowl and other intellectual sports in general represent a form of active learning that I think is really difficult to find anywhere else on campus. The way that we train and the way that we apply our knowledge at competitions is extraordinarily special and so important to everybody on the team, but also important to campus life in general. You know, we go represent UMBC, and we do well at these competitions. And the second point being that travel is our mission. So without funding for next semester, it's not that things will be inconvenient for us, it's that we will, for a second spring in a row, not be able to do what the club is made to do, which is to travel and to compete. So we're kind of in a unique position where, like, last spring was the first time in years and years that we didn't have the budget to travel, and it's looking like next spring might be the same. And so I was wondering if there's anything we can do to change that.
Question for the chair. Why did Ethics Bowl not receive funding?
So I believe it was that SurveyMonkey said that their things were not submitted. They had everything, it just wasn't resubmitted after the advisor signed, if I'm right about that, Jordan.
Yeah, the budget was never submitted.
But everything was submitted.
So everything was completed, but it wasn't submitted.
I was under the impression that it was submitted, and within the email that we got, it said that it was submitted.
So I can show you.
If I don't mind, do you have a copy of that email? Show us.
Yeah.
Okay. I also would not pass survey to have issues.
Also, quick question, I thought we decided to fund things if everything was submitted. Cause wasn't there another club that had an advisor, like sign off that wasn't submitted? Or is that just the advisor
No,
course?
they gave it verbal confirmation to Tori.
That was,
That's the only-
Scuba.
It was Scuba, so everything, they had actually submitted theirs,
Okay, I just,
but the advisor sign wasn't on there because their
Mhm.
advisor doesn't.
yeah, I know about Scuba, I thought there was another club that
It was Ethics Bowl.
was Ethics Bowl, okay. Okay.
There was multiple organizations that,
We didn't,
yeah, so on our end, this is what we see, so whenever they created when it was last edited, but it wasn't submitted.
But all of at least in the email that we got, it says that it was recorded as not being submitted despite being completed. All of the elements were in before the deadline.
Mm-hmm.
And I spoke to both Dustin and Liam the next day to try and figure out if everything was okay. And it was my impression that it seemed more like an issue with the system than us just not submitting something.
I am not the SurveyMonkey expert, so I don't know fully, I just know like what is seen here and based on the decisions they made.
During that time, there was still like issues with regards to applications SurveyMonkey got in time. So when I was answering the question, I was under the impression that it was fully submitted. Just that the timestamps were wrong, because you said you got an email saying that you had basically submitted the application. So if you have that email.
I'm wondering if I have it or Jacob has it. I'm not the treasurer, so I think I got most of the emails, but I'm not sure if I got all of them.
So if you have an email basically saying from SurveyMonkey, like, thank you for submitting your application, then I'm okay with adding them back to the competition pot. We might have to over-allocate a decent amount, but, or strip from other sources and locations. If they actually have a confirmation email, but at least according to the SurveyMonkey website on our end, it says not submitted, which is why it wasn't considered, because it wasn't put into our spreadsheet, because it wasn't at that stage yet.
So what it says on our end is that the advisor approval section is in progress, but was never submitted. So everything else says it was completed, so like your sign off was completed.
Yeah.
The advisor side says it's in progress.
What does, I don't quite understand what that means, because I was talking to Professor Elick, like, as we were doing it. And
Right.
I got emails even saying stuff like, your recommendation has been received. And so I'm a little confused why that.
This is what we can, that's because I am
For,
at my max knowledge on SurveyMonkey.
for the email that says your recommendations were received, do you think that was after you, like, they submitted the email for the advisor and then, like, SurveyMonkey sent that email?
I have no idea. So I have no idea what is scheduled for SurveyMonkey to send when things are completed. Like that's something that Candace set up. I have zero knowledge on it, so I don't know what SurveyMonkey is or is not supposed to do.
This email was received on October 18th at 10:31 p.m. So.
Yeah, I fully recognize that you guys have a really hard job and like, you know, timestamps are important, and I fully recognize we might have made a mistake, but like from my end, from filling it out, it seemed that we had not, and that's why and it also is the difference between us doing what we trained to do and not doing it. So I'm just, you know, wondering if there is anything to be done.
It's not up to me.
How are members of the board feeling about this?
I would caution an answer right now. I would prefer as a member to get more information on the topic, whether or not this is a SurveyMonkey issue or not. I think whether or not it's a SurveyMonkey issue is going to be a very big determining factor here. Although I do understand your club prepared for this over the term of the semester, our budget is really tight, and there were a number of clubs who were in a situation similar to yours, and we also chose not to fund them. And in my opinion, I feel that it's only fair if we stick to the precedent and treat everyone equally. But if it is an error on the SurveyMonkey end, I'm completely for reconsidering it and going about accordingly. But otherwise, I would just caution not. I'm open to hear what other members have to say.
I mean, when we voted on it, like, I wasn't really, like, for the idea of striking the ones that I completed and not submitted, but I wasn't in the majority, so. If anyone else would like to.
I mean, I also think that just looking specifically for off-campus, like, I know when we were doing the category of neither, there's a lot of budgets that like are in red because they were just never submitted. But I think, I mean, I know it's a hard line to kind of like define, but I think if everything is basically there, like I don't think the club went through the whole trouble, and as he's talking about, like the whole trouble of getting all the documentation and the budgeting and the advisor sign off just for the budget not to be submitted. I know that's kind of going back into a category of like determining like which club should be like funded or whatnot, but I kind of would agree with Nikki on this that, I mean, all of the elements are there, so it's just, I mean, I feel like in my opinion, like it should be under consideration for funding because all of the elements are there in the first place, so it's kind of odd that they just went through all that trouble to make a request and then it just wasn't submitted. So whether it's a SurveyMonkey issue or not, I think kind of plays a role in it, but at the same time, I think we just have to think of it from a standpoint of what is the club going to be able to do what their intention is without like any support from us. She's clearly stated that they can. So.
Ryan, Scott.
I was not on the board when you voted on this, so I'm a little lacking in for information, but how much is your club actually requesting?
I believe around 8,000 for the semester for 2 separate competitions. About 4,000 each.
I definitely think there's 2 pieces of information that we need. It's at what point in the process does the SurveyMonkey send out the email that you received, and also what emails do your other members actually have?
So it's a total of $6,250 for registry. Oh, I missed a column. Give me 1 second. $8,950, excluding the $500 for convocation.
We already voted on how we're going to handle it, so. I think it's weird to randomly, or not randomly, but overturn precedents like that.
Regarding reopening funding. Motion regarding funding.
I mean, I wouldn't really say that that's precedent. I mean, that's just a vote showing that we weren't going to consider funding for. I mean, I guess I'm just confused on. So, like, is there another club that's in like the exact same situation as us?
No, it was, there's 2, so also to bring Ryan up to speed too. When they started going through off-campus requests, there's a lot of requests that were in process but never submitted. for off-campus, they have to have an advisor sign off. So the majority of them didn't have any advisor sign off at all. Two of the organizations, Ethics School being one of them, and Scuba did have advisor sign-offs. Scuba's had called me like a week before budgets were due because their advisor just refuses to use a computer. So him and I had a conversation and then they had submitted. So theirs was actually submitted but didn't have the advisor sign-off, if that makes sense. Ethics School had an advisor sign-off, but it wasn't submitted. So essentially what the board decided to do was take a vote on if they would consider Ethics Schools and Scuba's because they had advisor sign-offs, but like some procedure wasn't completed. And they voted to not consider them in the competition pot. So all the other groups in red just didn't have any advisor sign-off at all.
How long ago was the submission date?
For when was it due?
Yes.
The 18th of October. Well, initially Scuba was in red because they didn't have that advisor.
Okay, but then you brought in the contact. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So the advisor signature was at 10:30 October 18th.
Apparently, so on what it shows for me, for one of them, the request is, one of them is 3:19 in case anyone wants to look at any of them. It says, it doesn't show a time, it just says last edited was October 19th. But my SurveyMonkey's also in like UCT time, so it's like ahead. So it's like not on Eastern Standard Time for some reason, but it was most likely on October 18th, but it says in progress.
And the email that her advisor got received about completing it was at 10:31 p.m.
You won't be able to see it then, if you said it's in progress. It's not going to show up.
Yeah. So, can you not see it?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, because I'm not the administrator or anything, so it won't show up.
It says it's 10:31.
That's after the time, or is that before the time?
Before the time that it wasn't submitted. For whatever reason.
Right.
That I have never had to fill one of these out, so I don't know what it looks like on a applicant side, just the admin side.
Well, I think what's important to note is I don't think any vote should be taken today. I think a very important key is when Candace gets back healthy, just asking her more information about the situation. I think she'll give us a lot of insight, and I think the board will be able to make a much better and more educated decision. So I would just caution against any vote tonight and ask her to come back on Tuesday if she wants to, or
So we can talk to Candace on Monday, because she will not be here
I was gonna say, she's
She's gonna be out Tuesday for surgery.
So we can talk to her on Monday. And try to get more information on SurveyMonkey. If you could potentially get more documentation and send that to the finance board email though, especially if like the advisor email, if your treasurer received any sort of like emails that you think are helpful, that you receive from SurveyMonkey, that will help us in conversing with Candace.
Okay, so I can send that to you guys and then maybe come back another day, or, 'cause I don't know exactly how this works.
We'll leave it up to them. We just advise, we don't make decisions around it.
So, if you could forward all of those, I'll forward it off to the board, or the board basically has access to that finance board shared email. And once a determination is made, or once you feel like we have enough knowledge to make a decision, you'll be called back into inform of that. And again, to give another, discuss, any more information we have not during that time, the board will give you, so you can send that. But yeah, I feel like it's an issue that needs to be addressed, it's just not something that we have enough information to address right now.
Yeah, totally makes sense.
Do you have any other questions for us, or does anyone else have any questions for you?
Just to say thank you for letting me talk to you guys. It's easier to just do it in person rather than try and back and forth email over it.
I think you should take a vote if we're gonna reconsider.
Alright, so is that a motion? Alright.
Well, I mean, didn't we just say that we want to get information prior
So
to?
he's asking if there's a vote if we even want to reconsider the request.
So if we even wanna like follow up on this with the information that
move on.
Yeah, pretty straightforward, but okay, just take a look.
Second, can I have a second for that motion?
Wait, can I ask, can you elaborate more on the rationale for not wanting to?
To reiterate, what I said earlier, the finance board has already made a decision on whether or not to consider budgets that were not submitted on time. So I would like another vote if that vote is being overturned.
All right, is there a second to Scott's motion?
So, okay, sorry, no.
I have another
No,
question.
we're already in the motion. All right. All those in favor of reconsidering ethics goals for funding, say aye. All those in favor of reconsidering ethics goals for funding, I mean, should I word it?
It's all in favor of reconsidering us, fucking please raise your hands now.
All opposed? All right, so 7-1? Or 6-1? 6-1, sorry, passes.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming.
Having me.
Well, just, yeah.
Basically you just said that you will
Yeah.
consider looking at it again.
Yeah, like all the follow-up information.
Yeah,
Like, you guys
so
will-
is he
okay.
gonna email, all the emails that they've gotten from
I'll send a follow-up.
finance board?
Basically, what I'll do is, since the board had already voted to not consider it, we wanted a formal vote on record if we were going to overturn that precedent, instead of just waiting to get the information and doing that. Am I understanding correctly?
So if we're gonna go back and redo it.
That being said, since you guys would like to reconsider it, if I can speak for just a bit, I'm still working, finishing out the precedents for the spring semester for conferences or competitions. If we were to reconsider this, would you want to hold off on official votes for conferences? Because if we add them back to the pot, it's going to change and adjust numbers, which also is an issue, simply because we told mock trial and Model UN, since they had the option of funding them, how much we would end up funding them.
Michael, then Scott.
So I'm honestly, I mean, I voted to reconsider, but I mean, honestly, I'm not really for putting these events back into the competition pot. I think we have already pretty much set our budget for it. The numbers are already calculated. And I believe we decided not to include their budget for good reason. I think if this is to be reconsidered, it needs to come out of something else, not out of competition, because that amount is, in my opinion, pretty set in stone, so.
Right, since we already figured out the numbers, we have now made a decision from overfunding at 2% to overfunding at 42% if we fully fund ethics school, or either that or we'll have to completely rework all the numbers that we've done this week.
I mean, just because we voted to like consider, I mean, I would still wanna look at the documentation. There's a chance that the application wasn't actually submitted on time, or there was not an error on SurveyMonkey's part, but on the organization's part. If everything was good on their end, I wouldn't, I mean, I know we did talk to, mock trial and Model UN, but I don't, it wasn't, was there formally legislation passed approving that number, or was it just just a conversation, but.
It was basically just a conversation. I told them this is how much the board would vote to allocate their organization, and then they went to the numbers to tell it. So while it's not my words to them, were not binding, because with the overallocation, this board could have voted to overturn my decision on that. However, I personally think it'd be pretty bad for optics if we told them this is how much we were going to fund, and then we ended up not giving them that amount.
I mean, I know you haven't actually put in the official legislation, but you did just vote on it, essentially.
I was neither.
That was the method that worked. we haven't officially voted on anything for competition. But
But
in
you
this-
did vote didn't you vote on Tuesday for the 3 organizations?
Yeah, technically we did an informal vote for 3 of them, in terms of locking in those so we can figure out how much to give to them too, so it's pretty set in. I think Ryan has something to say.
Yeah, so they requested $6,000, right?
More than that, it was like 8.
That was
Well,
$950.
That was for 2 competitions out, so
Yeah.
we've only funded the other organizations really only one event, which was capped at 4,000 at max. So I think if we do consider them, it would be at that or less.
Yeah, I mean, I would just reiterate that I don't think it's like fair to say that like we're gonna fully fund ethics bowl because we haven't fully funded any other competition with such high cost. But yeah, I mean, I think it's, I mean, not to get circular here, but I think we need to at least get that information and reconsider because it's what board members were asking for. So I think that this is something that needs to be done because I think the context does matter because everything is completely filled out. And there's timestamps and things like that for, right to the deadline. In terms of submission, we don't clearly know what happened, so.
So the way that I see it when it comes, at least from what I've heard from Ethics Bowl today, I think that I'm considering is, one, if we were to do this, I think the best place would be the false pot, and simply not releasing those funds to Ethics Bowl until the end of the semester when we know whatever's going to roll in the spring. I know it wouldn't really be keeping with the budget deadline, but they're in a weird situation. That's where I see us now. If we were to decide to fund them, where those funds could potentially come from, since I don't think it should come from competition. But after hearing them basically said that they sat down with their advisors to fill out all this stuff, I think I'd be curious and personally would be in favor of vote for maybe if it wasn't submitted, if the emails that they received indicated to them that it would have been submitted, if that makes sense. Like if the emails really didn't indicate that there was follow-up action that was needed, and if they were sitting there working with their advisor, then I can see why they may have assumed that their application was submitted without it actually being submitted. I think that's something to worth considering, because it is a new system, and I don't think any of us have seen that back end in terms of what emails you get when you're filing and filling that out. Because I know if I got an email that basically said, advisor approval is done, everything's been done for your application, but it hasn't been submitted, but like I got an email saying something like that, I can completely see why an organization wouldn't have gone through to do a final check or anything, because an email came back saying that. So that's where I'm at right now in terms of I would like to see those emails and see what the system sends out. But again, it's for this board to decide.
So, like your next, but before you go, can I just say, so like, the vote we took here isn't like necessarily automatically putting them back in the pot. We're just like, we wanna just see further evidence as to whether or not this is maybe a mistake on SurveyMonkey's end, which is something we use, or it's a mistake on their end. I understand like the other side though, like we're already like done with the work of competitions, we're basically done off campus. So this is like simply just to see whether or not what type of evidence they have to like support the case for needing extra funding. Mike and Scott, but I'd like to try and move on and get back to campus.
So I agree with what Liam said. I mean, that's the reason I sent the motion to reconsider. I think it's important for us to find out the information. But with that being said, I would like to just still emphasize that although Ethics Bowl did get it wrong, there were a lot of other organizations that did get it right. And I mean, I would be more curious as to how everyone was given equal opportunity to the same system, but yet, you know,
I swear to God.
Ethics Bowl seemed to have missed.
The lights go down too, sorry.
Did you sleep? Did you sleep? Sleep? How sleep?
Did you think it was on?
No, but
Oh,
the lights, I thought the
way
lights
Liam
did
reacted,
too.
I couldn't tell what you
Well, the signal's off. Go ahead, Mike.
I'm just curious. I'm just curious as to, I forgot my train of thought. I'm curious as to how all the organizations were given equal opportunity to the allocation system. And some organizations knew that they had to go back to resubmit, but Ethics Bowl seemed to at least state that they were unaware that there was a second, that they need to go and resubmit after they had spoken to their advisor. And you know, I do think that plays a crucial role here because I mean, we all stated that we weren't micromanaging. We all stated that we weren't going to be easy on orgs for missing those budget deadlines. But I see us kind of rolling some of those backs in some of the budgets we're going to reconsider. I mean, like I said, I am curious to reconsider just because I want to hear more information on it. But I am a little partial to my feelings on the situation. So.
This guy has a final point.
Well, it's my turn at 5 too, but I think that it's kind of weird that we changed like our entire plan because an organization came in, we made a decision the first time, and now we've made a decision to reconsider. In all likelihood, I don't think that they're going to receive funding. I think we have all the evidence that we need since they didn't submit by the deadline, and now we're just going to have to bring them back in to say no, kind of kicking them all down.
I have no advisement views.
Sure.
So, what I would advise from this point out is first to hear them out, second to take whatever we see from SurveyMonkey into consideration and training. Because if this was something that maybe they did not click something correctly and they thought it was submitted, I think they genuinely thought it was submitted. And if there's a button that's missing, that might be something to take into consideration with your trainings, just so that mistake doesn't happen again. Secondly, I think you all also need to remember it is a new system. And while being strict is important in following your guidelines, also having some empathy. So what that means could be a lot of different things. Empathy doesn't have to be here's the money, but I think some empathy needs to happen with this organization because they are coming to you for help. They're not like yelling at you. They're not whatever. Meet them where they are at. If that means, hey, it wasn't actually submitted, but here's how it should have been, a sit-down walkthrough with them, or maybe it was, we see how this could have been really easily misconstrued. Here's a break this time, but we won't give you a break again. I don't know what that's going to look like. That's for you all to decide, but try to remember this is a new process for everyone, not just you all. And what we think is really clear and cut might not be really clear and cut to them. So I also think there should be some outreach to them, whoever they fall under liaison-wise, on how they can raise money in other aspects.
It was my mom.
So that's me right now.
Yeah. So connecting them with like Good Starter, with OIA, that type of thing. Yeah.
All right.
Oh, it's also not your job to fund groups so they can function. Because that comes up a lot. That's not your responsibility. I just want that to be clear because a lot of organizations use that as an argument, like we can't function unless you give us money. But Courtney, whenever the new orgs are funding, we tell them funding is never promised. So that's just a side note.
Move to end discussion.
Seconded.
All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. Let's get back working on those purple, right? Purple.
312 Society of Physics. The physics students.
Mm-hmm. So they have two that are GVMs that are essentially identical, 312 and 318.
So move to strike 312 for this is a general body meeting.
Second.
All right. All those in favor? All opposed?
No,
Motion passes.
So how do we actually strike it and show that it's struck?
Can we change that?
Can you highlight it in red, please?
Yeah.
In
How about I just
the master request? Do you want to do that for me?
hold on. Do you want to do it on the colored sheet, or do you mean in the actual master request?
Master request.
So I'll just put it in as they get $0.
Yeah.
And then it'll go down to the bottom as the totals are down at the bottom for allocations. So Society of Physics students, that was 312, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so they're getting $0 for food and drink. So I'm doing that on the allocations page.
So the next one we're looking at.
318 is also in Society of Physics, and it's
No,
basically the
allocations is
same.
where I have it.
Okay.
Would you like to take a look?
Is there any way to just streamline this as?
I mean, we could look at
I think you all should still actually open and look at them.
Each one.
What a problem.
Because I given.
No, I mean, I think it's.
Recommendation for when striking clubs due to guidelines, asking if there are any objections. So as opposed to motioning and voting for those, basically saying, are there any objections to striking X? Here are no objections, the motion is passed with general consent. Simply to speed up, I don't believe a formal vote is necessary. When it comes to striking things that fall within our budgetary guidelines. While a formal vote may be necessary for other things, for things that we just know we're not gonna fund because we can't fund them, I see no reason why a vote is necessary.
Motion to strike FB 318.
Second.
Alright, any objections to striking 318? Alright, seeing objections, it passes. 318 will be struck.
I have a question for you guys, just for, I'm updating like now the allocations tab in this sheet. Do you want me to highlight ones you've already made decisions on? To make it easier to look at?
Yes.
Any
Just
special
like-
color request?
Just make it like red,
Okay.
like the whole line red, because we projected it.
Okay.
It's just allocation requests that have been completed, right, regardless of whether they hit strike through or not.
Yeah, so like the allocations, see that you're on the master, on the tab at the bottom, masters, allocations, that's where I'm putting it in.
Alright, yeah, that works.
And then I'm putting next to 0 after what they've requested, so you can actually see how much you already allocated.
Understood, thank you so much.
Delta Sigma Theta, is that the next one? 298?
This is ours. That's
So you're not attaching that.
That one's mine. That's not. Are you-
Well, there's a bunch of things, so you might want to take your time to look through each one, because
Wait, there's a bunch with theirs?
Delta Sigma Theta,
Mhm.
oh wait, those are on blue.
No, they're
No,
purple.
298.
Blue, what are you talking about?
Delta Sigma Theta is purple.
298.
298's blue.
Are you in
Or
the
it's purple.
tab? Are you in the?
This is blue, bro, what are y'all
What-
talking
what tab
about?
are
They're all in different tabs.
Which one?
There's just been questions and concerns.
Y'all have anything else that was
I thought you were colorblind for a minute. I said,
I'm not gonna lie, Sam.
I said, I mean, blue and purple are similar, but.
So for 298, the issue was their limited funding award.
So they're a limited funding org and they're hosting an event where they're charging UMBC students.
So based off our precedence with, who was it, singers?
Well,
It's
it's
not
just,
resident,
it's just
it's
a
not
general statute.
That wasn't the
They're gonna
precedent.
charge UMBC students
just-
that we
it's
are
already like-
gonna give them funding.
So I know there was a statute that stated that orgs could charge UMBC students if they were receiving less than 50% of finance board funding. So
Fully funded orgs, not for limited funding.
not for limited funding, okay.
Well, because they, I know it's not always the case, but we are under the impression that because of collective and because they belong to a more national organization, they have sources of funding.
I agree.
Yeah, so typically what you all fund for limited funding is, like, who is it? Mama's Boys, Kleptomaniacs, the, acapella groups are great examples because they host their concerts. You usually fund just their ECS fees.
Or the sorority that did the rack.
Yeah, or the,
Or
the haunted house. So the sorority that used to, Zeta, they're not here anymore, but they would do a haunted house. It was free to everyone. You would pay for that too, historically. But it was free.
Motion to strike FB 298. Second.
I don't know if there's enough information. Why do you want to strike it now before I vote?
Limited funded ordinance, stretching time red students.
We're just doing this by general consent, so if you have an objection, you can.
It says the status of
Well-
the organization, so are they elected and not there and keep serving
There you go.
What? I didn't know that.
Can you just read that again? Yeah.
Underneath the question, please explain how charges were determined for tickets. It says this acts as a fundraiser for our organization, so out of the above ticket amount, DST will keep $5.
And you all do not fund fundraisers.
We're philanthropy fundraisers, but I think that's to be considered. We don't
For
fund
the sake of
fundraisers.
finance board, fundraisers for the org, philanthropy is for somebody else. Just for my verbiage.
I mean, also there's like multiple like statutes that we don't find here, so.
We don't fund fundraisers for the organization because we denied them to be a green fundraiser in the fall. We also don't fund philanthropy. Because there was, I forget what it is, but there was another event that fall that we chose not to fund. So it wouldn't matter regardless of that, if funding is not an at cost or per cost thing, that precedents and I believe some statutes say that we can't fund it.
Brian, did you have something to say?
So it's my motion to strike, that's it.
I second it.
All right. Any objections to striking FBR 298? If no objections, passes.
Move to strike FBL 208.
Accepted.
208?
American Society of Mechanical Engineers, I'm gonna guess, is it cut off?
Yes.
So this is,
I did a control F, it literally says general body meeting, so.
but
Is
it
it
says,
like-
it says October, it says October 19th, like 1 a.m.
Yeah,
Is it an UTC time?
no, it says EDT.
Mine says UTC at 1 a.m. on
Mine says UTC.
Mine says.
Yeah, but yours says UTC at 5:24, so mine says EDT at 1:24.
Tori, can I ask?
Mine
Yeah.
says.
So for the ones that have GPM rules, are they like ones that identify them?
Yeah, they actually
Sorry.
say
Take screenshots, it's something we should
So,
bring
that-
up. That's kind of.
So I want to bring up, like, if they indicate that it's general body meetings, it would probably still be helpful to look through the events because we made the same mistake with astronomy club before we just start striking it out.
Well, I think we argued that we weren't going to go and reconsider any organization that listed general body meeting. Philosophy Club was really just us exercising a stretch of grace, but, me, Philosophers Anonymous. Was it?
That was Astronomy.
No, I was right, Astronomy Club. But,
all the clubs.
we stated that it was only a one-time thing and we weren't going to exercise that type of discretion on any other org, so.
From what's indicated, it's just a general body meeting, there's no other information.
We should tell them that, Sahas's needs for the t-shirt.
Yeah.
Is that what the 400 is for?
There's 300, it says, well, in the description it says 300 for sure, and I guess that's what the common is.
Oh, I see.
And $100 for supplies, but supplies aren't really mentioned.
It says materials for activities.
Tori,
Very
maybe
vague.
email Candace and ask about this, so what you think, because.
Also, there's-
We're gonna talk to her on Monday.
There's
Oh, you
no-
mean the time?
Right, because it,
Cause I have no
Usually
way to
add
tell.
a
I
note
put
I can
extras
put
in
that
it.
in the notes for when we meet with her on Monday.
right,
And no,
because it's concerning that, you know,
We should tell them that
it
t-shirts are for
states
Sahas.
that,
Oh,
you know,
yeah, we
one
should
person's
look
computer is
at that.
October
We're gonna put a
19th,
review on
and then
Yeah, mine says we should push the
mine's the
Share.
TC.
Justin,
Can you look up what this was?
what do we do last?
Yeah, which,
So, mine says EDT.
I got you.
Mine says
You can see both, you
USDT.
can see the reviews. or-
That's concerning. That's very
There's no
concerning,
review
actually.
tab though, like there's for Sahas.
Oh, these people can see these?
Yeah, so it was, this,
No, it's for
although
us
this is
to
a general
review.
body meeting, Courtney is in Eastern Standard Time, so we can ask her for the time, it was submitted on time. 9:24 p.m.
Oh, mine is on the quick one as well.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
ES, it should be
What
EST.
is?
Mine's EDT.
All of ours is in different time zones, so it's hard to know if they were actually submitted on time.
Is there a
It should be
setting that
EDT though.
adjusts
I
that?
have no idea.
We're
That's
on, it should
It
be
does
EDT,
say-
we're on
it-
daylight saving
Yeah, it
time
does
right
say,
now.
Oh.
it's the same thing,
Interesting.
it's
I didn't know it was a
yeah.
thing, sorry. just
No,
ignore
don't
me.
apologize, it's fine, I'm gonna add that to the questions for Monday.
For us to fix that, I don't know how to fix it.
Wait,
can we just assume all of them are submitted on time?
I think so. There was just a general concern, cause
Oh,
it
so
wasn't in the right time zone.
what you have to do
They're just
is
like,
when you
what-
go
what
to
is
your
it?
dashboard, you can change the time
Oh.
zone that pops up. So I'm changing mine to Eastern Standard right
So-
now.
Oh, it's Eastern
Okay,
Standard
so
Time.
on the summary, it says last submitted, it says October 19th, 1:24 a.m. And when I hit the application, it says submitted on October 18th, 9:24 p.m. So
So there's two different times.
So click on your
Yeah.
name
I guess that's the difference of
and then go
exactly
to account settings
4 hours.
and then it should pop up
I
with
guess
the
something
time
with the
zone.
system. It's take 4 hours to process. Thank you.
So, has happened to a lot of clubs where the submitted time is different than the time it was actually submitted just because of delay of the system. So if it's been submitted, even if the submitted date is times after the deadline, it is submitted.
Okay.
That's the only distinction that we need.
Wait, see that?
The submitted time is inaccurate because I guess it took time to process or something, but if the application was submitted, it was on time. If it was not submitted, it was not on time.
Yeah, because theoretically would not be able to.
There's also a quote from American New York.
Just move to.
Yeah, I guess we should move to strike 208.
Second.
Alright, any objections? Okay, no objections, it passes by general
What's the next one?
Philosophers Anonymous 330.
The last one I saw was 329. Wait, is it?
What?
I put 100 page and then the last thing on the
But
second
in
page
this
is 329. It doesn't work for me.
Well, why does it work for me?
Because they're special. I told you that.
You mean the search bar that I could use?
Yeah, just type the number in.
Command
What is it?
330.
What was the issue?
Do you see it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
copy it too. Can you wait?
Oh,
Is it the
there is a third page. Okay.
Yeah, where's page 2?
No, I'll do it later. I need to keep.
End of year party, is there room for?
No, end of the year party. So.
Decorations.
Oh no, we're good now.
Well, what was the general concern for you? It doesn't actually state it was a Gmail, although I know we can assume.
It does.
It does state it. So we have a question in there. Is this, it's right under the end date and time. Is this event a general body meeting? Yes.
Okay, so never mind.
Those are the only ones that, like, if it's specifically stated yes, that I put it in purple.
Okay.
If there was any room for, like, conceptual thinking, I didn't even throw it in there.
Okay.
It's not my decision to make.
Move to strike 330.
Second.
Any objections? Any objections? Passed by general consent. 330 is struck. Struck it.
Pretty
No,
good.
it's struck it.
Struck.
Strict it.
Struck?
I'm telling you, I'm a writer too, it's struck it.
Student allergy awareness.
I believe you're right.
Yeah, I like Google.
You have to ignore this conversation.
It's actually, it is strucken. I just Googled it.
Is it?
An old dialect past participle next strike.
No, he said old dialect.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is
It means
the
to speak properly.
21st century.
Update your English, bro.
Alright, so 175 is the next one.
What's called?
Food allergy awareness.
It's kind of,
How long can you do this? Is it one?
it's
Special
kind of
committee
looks
meeting?
like, this kind of looks like, you know, having a speaker coming in and speaking.
What number is this?
175.
And they're planning on advertising via pen.
Also, they're only asking for 20.
So, what was the concern here?
They have yes selected for general
I
body
don't
meeting.
know if this is like,
So I think it,
it says our general meeting attendance plus attendance by general body members through advertising efforts.
It says it's a general body.
It says yes for general body meetings.
I think they interpreted general body meeting as general student body if you look at the takeaways from the event. So I think this is so legit.
They
Right.
spoke,
It's-
they spoke to me when they were filling, not mentioning the professions.
This might also,
Yeah, but see, like, that's the same thing that astronomy collected.
it
Yeah.
also might be.
Like the guest
That's
speaker.
what it is. They said that.
So they have $15 for marketing and then $12 for something else.
It's
These
for
ones for
parking for, because on this campus we have to pick.
Okay, I think this is a legitimate event, so.
I think it's a legitimate event, but keeping in line with the way we voted for every other organization tonight, I would say we should strike it just because we said we would not consider general body meetings at all.
But it's not a general body meeting.
It says yes for general body meetings.
Yeah,
But
but
they-
unfortunately with Mike on this one. It's the same situation as Astronomy Club from last time. Like, it was clearly not a general body meeting, but it wasn't as such, therefore we denied it. We actually created an entire new system just to potentially fund them for part of it.
Because we categorically denied them.
Yes,
But we don't have to do that.
we did that under the, I lost this one.
So I think this brings up another great point for like definitions, because when we had this conversation about astronomy club, we kept saying, oh, everyone knows what general body meeting is. Like, how many days do you know about what general body meeting is? So I think when we're looking at stuff like this, we have to take that into consideration that, again, just like we're SGA people, we're like looking at orgs constantly, and we like look at budgetary policy, we look at definitions, so like we know what it is, but I think kind of like on Scott's point, like we need to like look through these applications and kind of determine based on what we know and what's actually being presented. Because I think it's just like wrong to be like, oh, like you click general body meeting, like when I think a good portion of people actually probably might not know what a general body meeting is, because the terminology, because even in their answer they say like people who regularly attend our meetings, but then also the general student body, which I think can be confusing. So I think if, for the purposes of right now, like taking that context into consideration, but also when we finalize budget season, like maybe putting out some like general reminders, or I don't know if we have to put it in somewhere. I don't know if there's a definition somewhere, but like defining what a general body meeting is for our purposes, because I think that it is kind of up in the air about what people think it actually is.
Or at least making the distinction between like overall student body.
Yes, yeah,
and
correct.
people who are like, yeah.
I also don't really understand the reasoning of going through all the ones that are listed as a general body meeting if we're going to categorically deny it. Like the whole point is to figure out if it actually is a general body meeting or not just to categorically deny everything.
So I understand that, but also we said we weren't going to micromanage organizations, and they did submit the budget, and they did state that it was a general body meeting. So, I mean, personally speaking, I feel like I spent a lot of time sending a lot of organizations, and they're not my words, but just personally, I feel like I spent a lot of time with a lot of organizations really explaining everything. I even sent an email just about general body meetings and what they were. And I mean, although I feel like Sky, even in treasurer training, I went to a couple of your treasurer trainings, I went to a couple of your spring budget meetings, you explained general body meetings, and I mean, we stated that we weren't going to fund them. As such, I feel like as a board, we have to draw a line somewhere and say we're not going to fund them. I mean, if we keep funding stuff that we say we're not going to do, then it's going to make it look like a joke. We're not going to have a stance. So, I mean, unfortunately, I understand the unfortunate part about, you know, clubs may not have meant that it was a general body meeting, but we kind of stated that we were not funding general body meetings from here on, and I think it's something we need to stick to. Otherwise, we will not have actually any decision-making power as a board, because we will just keep, you know, contradicting ourselves. So.
Any points? Ryan?
I think this goes along with the infuse kind of concept, and I feel like I stand more with Zane and Scott on this one. A matter of definition is very easy to misconstrue without like an official definition.
I think the other main point that I'm worried about too is that if we decide to fund it because we deemed that it was not a general body meeting, but they listed it as such, I don't want that to be used as a kind of quote unquote proof that other orgs will come in and be like, well, why didn't you fund our general body meeting? And they'd be like, well, because we as a board determined it wasn't. Like, yeah, but this club said it was a general body meeting and you guys funded that, so what's different about ours? And I think that gets into a lot of board subjectivism, even though we just made an amendment to our budgetary statutes regarding general body meetings. And granted, that language was written as deemed for, but I'm pretty sure the general body statute would participate if it's a general body meeting. We're not going to fund it if we deem it to be such. But that brings up a lot of subjectivism on the board, and that leads into favoritism as well, because with Astronomy Club, we did that. Anyone could argue that we were favoritism to Astronomy Club. We held how many votes on that regarding it being a general body meeting versus it not being a general body meeting, and ended up creating a whole new system because we were wrong. But from what I hear, action was taken based on that to say, hey, this is what a general body meeting is. We don't do that. They listed it as a general body meeting as such, and personally I believe that we as a board need to take a decision that we don't fund that, because I don't want that being justification moving forward for why we didn't fund half of the general bodies that we just struck from this list. But I think there's 2 responses, and then after that, I'm going to make a motion to retake control of the chair and table this talk so I can do competitions.
Do you guys have any points that you want to add?
Yeah, it's just,
India first, then
So FIA is one of the clubs that I am the liaison for, so regardless of what Michael may have sent his clubs, I did not send an email specifically defining what general body meetings are, or specifically saying that finance board will not fund general body meetings. And FAA, they come in to speak with me during, or they made an appointment with me, and I went over their applications with them, and they had told me that this is not the general body meeting, because they were having a speaker, and they were going to have the speaker like come and talk about, I think, like something related to their club's topic, and so that's what they were asking me about, like where to put like funding for parking and then stuff about competitions. So I was like right next to them and everything, so.
fine. I think if we had a definition for general body meeting, we could like with precision say this is what is different about their application from your application. They just miscategorized it. I think that's something that would be tenable. We could defend if other clubs came back and said, "Hey, this club got general body meeting funds, but we didn't." We would have a precise definition for what it was and why we.
That sounds like an interesting piece of legislation to write up for later. So I guess I suggest a motion to move this into a vote. Would anyone like to do that?
Move to, I say move to strike, Philosophers Anonymous.
Food allergy awareness.
Oh, I was looking at the wrong thing. Food allergy awareness, special committee. What meeting?
Is that a second?
Seconded.
All right, all those in favor of striking food allergy awareness? All those opposed? All right. 3 to 4, this motion fails. And you'll be considered for point.
Does everybody have,
Yeah, I'd like to see control of the chair back to myself. Thank you. With that, just one thing I'd like to bear in mind that we still have funding decisions to make. So even if this was still considered funding, that's how it is. You guys are board. It's a democratic body. I appreciate the discourse discussion debate that happened, and I'm proud of you guys for that. Because I think everyone was able to state their points, and everyone kind of understood what the situation was. I think you all listened and heard each other, and still made votes on how you felt. So that's some good deliberation right there. That being said, I'd like to move to table on-campus discussions so that I can get back to competitions and bring up back competitions now that the explanation for all those are done.
second?
All right, are there any objections? If you have no objections, the motion is passed with general consent, and we're going to head back to our requested sheet. So this is our competitions category. The top part is basically the same for all of them for on-campus, which was that basically indicating we funded that per person. The numbers have been updated to reflect how much was requested versus how much we could allocate. The first organization in the off-campus sheet was, Retriever Publics. So their additional explanation would be that due to the nature of this competition category, the goals are only comfortable funding for the people going to compete. This, along with the limited funding available to the board in general, 164 would be fully funded. This funding included travel, registration, and lodging. Scott.
I would like to add in that, in viewing their website, we funded the maximum people for a team, including one coach.
Any objections?
I think you should make it specific now to student coach.
All right, any objections to is as stated.
I just not really, I just want to change the organization to everything, but that's not really, it's fine, everything's fine, it's fine, ignore it.
I spell organization.
Yeah, you always are working.
Because that's how I was taught to spell it. But whenever I copy this over it's like someone
You do know
changed,
this, like,
Scott, I think Scott changed all of these too.
I did.
You did? Oh.
I just didn't say anything, but this time I am saying it.
Your other organizations have Z's in them, so if you're gonna.
Yeah, because that's why I copied off for Tori. We might as well change all of them. You can control that.
Yeah.
And just whenever I'm typing it, like, it feels weird to me when I type it.
Yeah, that's fine, I just wanted to let you know, I've been like, just kind
She's lurking, changing everything. I'm doing all of the work. For the second one, which was AICHE, the additional explanation is that due to limited funding available, the board was only going to fund for 60 foot goes to the competition. And in keeping with finance board precedent, the board voted to fully fund competition costs for the organization with the Z. Any objections?
Do we fund? Oh yeah, I get to for competition.
Yeah. That was a potential, but we did love that. For number 3, which was SAE Baja. There was limited funding for each organization because some organizations requested less than the given amount distributed. The board was able to allocate slightly more than just the $3,746.25. Due to the nature of the request being for supplies, the board voted to put the amount allocated under Baja East, which is what we did. Since it was all a request for supplies, and not like individual ones that would be based per event, the board, you guys were okay with just voting to put it all in one category, and East was that category.
And East is in May, I think, right?
Yeah. I don't know when it is, but like, once they get the funds, they can basically use it for whatever if they're doing it for a supplies thing. So that's just where that came from. Up next is mock trial. There was limited funding for each organization. Because some of the organizations requested less than the amount distributed, the board was able to allocate slightly more than $3,746.25. After meeting with the organization's treasurer, the funds were allocated as requested by the organization. Just that they know why the funds went there. I mean, we did meet with their treasurer. The treasurer came and said, I want these funds to go here. We put the funds there. Simple as that. Number 5 was Model UN. So there was limited funding available for each organization because some organizations requested less than the amount distributed. The board was able to allocate slightly more than the $3,746.25. After meeting with the organization's president and treasurer, the funds were allocated as requested by the organization. Lodging costs were also lowered based on information received during a finance board meeting from a member of the organization. That's when Lillian came in and just said the $1,000 deposit was part of the overall and not an extra add-on, so we dropped the cost from $6,700 down to $5,700. Any objections? Sorry, I'm talking fast. I want to make sure that we spend all of our time wisely. And then finally is SAA Snowmobile. So after meeting with an e-board member and getting clarification, the lodging costs were reduced by 1 night. This is where we brought them from 8 down to 7. Finance board statutes forbid the use of the student dollar on non-undergraduate students, thus preventing funding for an advisor. Competition fees were indicated to be used to buy shirts, which would be covered by SAHAS. I think he's going to add that as the secondary ad hoc allocation system and not the budget system. Thus, that request was denied, but the rest of the request was fully funded as requested. Any objections or add-ons? All right, cool. Are you guys comfortable voting on the final competitions or final numbers for spring? For competitions, yes. That's why I'm asking if you guys are comfortable.
Yeah.
All right, straw poll. Who's okay with voting on competitions today? Please raise your hand now. Who is not comfortable with voting on competitions today? Please raise your hand now. Justin, what is it from Justin? If you don't care, you're comfortable. I mean, am I wrong? Regardless, Michael, go ahead.
Can I just give a little discussion, see if I'm changing one's mind? Because
Of course, that's a motion.
What did you vote for?
not to include ethics pool.
Sure.
Well, this would be not comfortable with voting on.
I mean, I want to vote on it tonight. Just move forward, that's what I'm trying to say.
All right, the chair will accept the motion.
I think I voted to reconsider ethics bowl. What I did not vote for was for them to be put back into the competition pot. I think including them in the competition pot would unfairly slight all the organizations that did do the correct thing, which I think was part of our justification of why we were removing them from the pot the first time. In addition, I think also we have given some of the orgs some pretty, not concrete, but just some estimates of how much we were planning on allocating their organization. And to go back and cut that number significantly to,
Highest
I
force
guess,
jump
count
right
for, count for,
Ethics wall, I look 332.
there. So for that reason, I
Alright,
think
thank you.
it would be very beneficial for the finance board to move to go and vote for competitions and reconsider ethics bowl at a later time if it is to be reconsidered.
So wait, why reconsider them if you want to go legislation now?
We're reconsidering them to be considered at a, in my opinion, it's being reconsidered at a later time. It does not need to come out of the competition pot. So if there is any reconsideration for funding them, I think it should come out of, like, Liam recommended the SAHA system at the very end. I don't believe it should be considered at all for competition due to the fact that our budgets we've really gone through and definitely split our budget in such a way that we have funded organizations or see fit to fund organizations as we have. Going and funding them out of it would be completely counterproductive to what we have. So that's where I stand. I hope I changed someone's mind.
Or encourage someone to vote.
Any other discussion? Anthea, go ahead.
I guess for like events where I'm for competitions, like I guess if the team qualifies, we tell them to go through Sahas, right? But would we be, I guess, fully funding in Sahas or?
That would be for you all to decide then.
Yeah. So I wouldn't count this as like a qualification type request. My suggestion for this process was waiting until the end of the fall semester, and seeing whatever was left in the fall semester Sahas pot, and then maybe again keeping institution with the 4,096 that we offer other intellectual sports. Give it like the same measurement, being like, hey, you have this much to do, but just in terms of where that location of money was going to come, not from the competition pot, but from the fall Sahas. Since whatever's left in there is going to roll over to the spring to be used anyway, so it's not going to be affecting our spring pot in terms of how we would allocate. Because in ideal, we would assume that all fall Sahas pot would be used and spring would be its fresh pot. So this would be basically taking money at the end of its lifespan in one section and siphoning off a little bit to help out this organization, while the rest would funnel into spring Sahas. That was the suggestion that I had before. If that's how you guys wanted to proceed, if you did end up wanting to fund ethics bowl, that would be a way that we could do it that would keep within our precedents, that allow the funding to not come from competition pot, and that would ensure that the funding doesn't come from another place or doesn't harm the rest of the legislative process. If that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense.
So can we move to have another straw poll?
Yeah. All right. So straw poll. Everyone who's comfortable with voting on the current competition pot numbers today, please raise your hand now. And all who are still uncomfortable with voting on competitions, please raise your hand now. Those who are not comfortable voting on the competition pot today, please raise your hand now. You all seem very hesitant.
Sorry, I just got really distracted.
You're good. But that's 4-3 is the motion carries, so we go voting on the competition pot.
Sorry, just talking to myself. It's the norm you get used to.
You can talk to me if you.
Just,
My door's always open.
I have another shirt on now for like 400
I'm just not
That's what I just
Oh, lazy. It's Friday.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
I thought this.
you guys ready to vote?
Oh,
Yes.
I could change on the funding.
The chair, what are the requests this time?
I'd like to fund Baja the same amount as Model UN. Model UN is the highest funded out of the competitions.
What is the amount?
That would bring us overspending by 1.344% to 2.63%.
How much money?
Yeah, total.
So that would increase their funding by approximately
About
$300.
What is the total over?
The total over would be $592.82.
That is-
The overspending amount?
Yeah. Because we're for overspending by 290, that would be, no, wait, no, that doesn't, never mind. My mental math was off. All right, there's a motion on the floor to increase the amount funded to Baja from $4,094.46 to $4,385.00. Second. There's a second. Wait, before I do that, there's a motion on the floor to do that. Wait, no, yeah, we can't go to discussion. Never mind, there's a second. All in favor, please raise your hand now. All opposed? All right, the motion carries, will be increasing the funding. Would you guys like to, they made the motion before to go into discussion. Would you like to have discussion on it?
Retroactive discussion. Seconded.
Mike, I didn't interrupt. You were about to say something when the motion was going on, so I didn't have to shut you down.
Sure, so if Scott made the motion, if Nithya had seconded, I could deny the motion to open discussion, but when Nithya seconded, the motion became adopted by the board.
The motion was the motion to amend the legislation in there, and therefore the legislation is amended, but we can have a full discussion rather than approving the legislation.
Theoretically.
So we can have discussion if you want.
Because I never introduced it, so that's why. So it'd be fundamentally changing what it is, but we can, when we bring it back up for a vote, you can change it.
I'll let you know why.
Alright, I'll let you know how that parliamentary switch works out in a quick moment. But for now, I'd like to introduce FBL 132-1920, which is the funding of Virtue River Poets Spring 2020 competition off-campus request. This would be for the total amount of $2,097.29. Is there a motion on the floor? Second. All in favor, please raise your hand now. All opposed? All right, I'd like to introduce FBL 133-1920, which is approval of AICHE's spring 2020 off-campus competition request for the total amount of of 6 people to go. What's 6 times 4? For the total amount of $4,030.02.
For who?
For AICHE. That's the funding for 6 people. $4,030.02. Okay. Is there a motion on the floor?
Second.
All in favor, please raise your hand now. All opposed? Tell us where you vote.
Oh, I said it.
Yeah, but you still have to do it. All right, the motion carries. Introducing FBL 134, which is the approval of SAE Baja's spring 2020 off-campus competition request for the amount of $4,385. Is there a motion on the floor?
Did you want to move into discussion?
So this is where you can move into discussion if you want to talk about it, or you can move to amend that amount, which we could amend it back to what it was, or amending it how.
Motion to come to discussion.
Second.
All right, we are now in discussion.
Alright, so why move the money over to Baja? Like, why specifically?
Because both mock trial and UN got increases over their amount, decided to fund an additional person. I wanted to give Baja also kind of the opportunity to be funded at more than where they were. And because they're getting funded so much less, I think it would be beneficial to fund them as much as they can, and by funding them at the maximum amount that we're funding any organization in competitions and only going over by basically 1% more, an overspending, I thought it would be fine to do so, to give them a little bit extra money.
Michael.
I have an issue with this because of the fact that we have already made concrete numbers for the justification of how we were funding boards. And I mean, I understand that we did increase that amount per Liam's recommendation to round up to a person, but I'm not understanding the justification of just adding additional money just for the sake of it. I see that as counterproductive to what we're attempting to do as a finance board, and really honestly kind of hurting the way we have made decisions and precedents to fund organizations if we go about as such.
Scott?
Mike, in your own thing, you said that we changed the numbers per Liam's recommendation. I want to see what's different from mine.
Right, but the numbers were changed based on people, not just on the sake of we're increasing them by $300.
Baja's not asking for people, so therefore they couldn't be
Right.
increased for people purposes.
Right, and
It's
I,
funding towards their supplies at the same rate as basically UN.
right, but we're increasing the amount for just because, not because of the fact that we're trying to justify, we're trying to give them that partial person.
Why should they not have an opportunity to increase like UN and mock trial?
Because we justified that we were increasing the amount because we were trying to pay for a partial person, not for the fact that we're just increasing because they requested supplies.
So I think what Michael's point here is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is like more like a further student will be able to go on to the like competitions with them, while Baja will simply be using it on supplies. So it's not like more students will be able to get involved, if that's like sort of the direction.
Thank you for clarifying.
The argument is that from the outside, it seems like an arbitrary increase to use another club as the basis for the funding of this club to say, well, we funded Model UN at this amount, so let's just raise Baja to that same amount because we feel bad for them. Like, I'm sure there are other explanations, but from the onset, that's basically, if I was gonna write a rationale, it would be because we gave other works opportunity, we feel bad that Baja isn't because they're just supplies, therefore we're going to raise their money. And as a chair, I don't feel comfortable writing that as the explanation for this board as to why we did so. Because by that logic, why don't we go ahead and increase AICHE by another person and over allocate there, it'd only be an additional 1.8%. Why can't we increase funding for, another category? It'd only be an increase of 1%, we get an additional person to go for each. I think it's a dangerous path for us to follow. However, I do see what you're saying on the fact that they weren't given that opportunity. I think a middle ground that I'm willing to propose is that since we already technically didn't follow our standards for Baja, I'm willing to increase their funding or change it from instead of the 4094 to 4,140, because that would be quote unquote funding for 12 people in the per person category of the request of 345 per person. So stay in precedent with line, we'd be funded them per person technically as requested, and it still gives them a little bit of a bump and increase over the amount. I see that as a middle ground personally, but I think that's for you guys to decide and debate and discuss. Michael, thoughts?
So under this new recommendation or proposal, you will be funding every organization based on the max amount of people. So like the So you're pretty much saying that with ICHE,
Well, so the example used for the SHE was the example we're both not saying we should increase the funding. I think Scott does bring up a good point though, the fact that it is by per person, and kind of with Baja, they just got the flat amount without any consideration for that, which is why I'm proposing the middle ground option, which would be increasing their funding. So it'd be technically funding for 12 people, which would give them about $4,140, which is more than they're currently getting. But I don't see why, personally, for the arbitrary number, just bring it up to Model UN is, because then Baja's funding is dependent on Model UN's funding, that kind of just feels weird to be able to explain. I don't know how else to explain, but if you have a different way to explain it, that might be better, I'm willing to hear that. But Michael, go ahead.
I just
You're good.
I just feel weird about, you know, trying to increase everyone's budgets and we're already in a deficit. I mean, I kind of understand the rationale between funding orgs with partial people. We're trying to maximize the total amount of money they could receive without reducing the amount of money they could not receive. But for Baja, we're pretty much just increasing their money just for the sake of increasing their money. And I'm really against that because of the fact that, you know, you're not trying to slight any organization per person, but you're trying to just increase Baja's funding just in general, just because. And we're already in a deficit of X amount of money. Why increase that deficit by any amount of money? So that's my rationale behind it, but
I agree. Elsa?
I mean, I agree with that point, but now I'm sort of in this position where I am questioning why we made that exception for mock trial and Model UN. Because, like, it's like everything that you described, it also applies to those organizations. And so now I'm like, oh wait.
so I mean, in my opinion, their max amount of money would have funded a partial person. We would have been cutting out a complete partial person by not rounding their funded person, by like rounding it up. But for Baja, the nice thing about, well, not nice, but the thing about their budget request is we had already gone through and cut by this amount, and it was just it was the flat amount because they weren't requesting per person, they were just requesting for supplies. So, I mean, although we would be slighting organizations that were only requesting per person, we wouldn't be slighting Baja because we're not funding per person, we're funding per supplies based on off-campus competition amount. So I really don't see any reason to increase Baja by any amount, if you ask me, but that's just my opinion. I'm one person on the board.
And also to answer your points, the chances are, since we fund per person, we can't say we're funding 11.5 people, because then by financial precedent, that 0.5 would automatically go back to the board. Since they can't spend it on half a person, since we allocate it per person, that's why we rounded it up. In the situation where it was a close one, we would run it down, but a lot of the situations it was relatively close, which is why especially it's run up for both. I'm not saying it's general precedent that we will always round up per person, because say that, you know, we only have $4,000 to allocate and each person costs 300 and we get it to like 2,900, I'm not gonna give the extra 200 over because those numbers don't add. But for these two situations, we just did. Are there any other discussion points for SAU Baja? We technically have 3 options on the table for us, so I'll split that into 2 runoffs in terms of if you would like to make an amendment.
Okay, move to amend SA Baja back to the original amount.
Alright, there's a motion on the floor to change the funding from Baja from $4,385 down to $4,094.46. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded. Alright, all in favor, please raise your hand now. All opposed? 4 for, 3 against, the motion carries. And the document as amended is now funding Baja a total of $4,094.46. Are there any amendments on the table?
Move to approve FBL 1314-1920.
I'm sure we'll that's out of order as we have yet to the discussion.
Move to end discussion.
Second.
All in favor, please raise your hand now. All opposed?
On the process, why was it no longer in discussion?
Good point.
Move to approve FBL 134-1920.
Second.
Process, whatever.
Yeah.
Does our amendment still stand there?
Yes.
The amendment still stands due to error of the chair.
But
What do you mean? As amended, or are you trying to state?
As amended.
As amended. Alright, just making sure. favor, please raise your hands now. SAE Baja. All opposed? The motion carries. 7-4, 0 against, 1 abstaining, 1 not present. Alright. Question?
I'm just like process.
We classed Baja at the original one, just they're all on the same page.
Oh yeah, I got that.
Actually, I think you're okay with making a considered discussion. If you're discussing the document, you just can't motion it while, you just can't approve it while you're still discussing it. But you can change it while you're discussing it.
Okay.
So we're good. No worries. I'd like to introduce FPL 135-1920.
Before that, just as a point, can we go back and add rationale for that to Baja at the end? So, you know, this is well documented and noted.
We added all the rationale, at least the original
Yeah.
reasoning, so I
Rationale
don't
was
think we
made
have
with
to.
the original funding in mind. I did not change the rationale when the original vote was made to change it up.
Yeah.
Therefore, the rationale is the same.
Okay.
But we can go back over it once we're done with this, just so we're all clear.
Okay.
All right, introducing FPL 135-1920, approval of mock trials, spring 2020 off-campus budget request for the total amount of $4,106.20.
4,106.
Yes.
Move to approve FBL 135-1920.
All in favor, please raise your hand now. All opposed? The motion carries. Introducing FPL 136-1920, approval of Model UN's spring 2020 off-campus budget request. Is there a motion on the floor? For the amount of $4,385.00.
Move to approve FBL 136-1920.
All in favor, please raise your hands now. All opposed? Motion carries. Finally, introducing FBL 137-1920. Which is approval of SAE Snowmobile Spring 2020 off-campus competition request for the total amount of $4,066.82.
Where are you reading this?
Move to approve FBL 137-1920.
Second.
Is there a question?
Third, there's a second to the motion.
Second to the motion. All in favor, please raise your hand now. All opposed?
They're all correct.
The motion carries. So the total amounts were wrong for these,
Yeah.
but I take them, so when I was discussing with mock trial, this is the number that I was taking from, which is the 7 times per person model UN.
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
Yeah, this is still in our copy sheet, so this we change over to the competition sheets, that's a lot clearer when we eventually distribute this. With that being said, with one exception, possibly, we are done with off-campus events.
Are they being released today or Tuesday after we consider methods?
No, these will be released today.
Yeah.
You voted, there's no money left in the competition pot, so if you were to decide to use money from that pot, you'd just be completely over allocating, and I would probably, as the chair, categorically deny that motion at this point, now that we have voted. That being said, all of these will be moved to the vote record, and I'll put in that rationale for it by tonight, assuming that Brenda sends off on it theoretically by Monday, emails will be sent out to those organizations being informed about their funding status. With that being said, I'd like to reopen discussion on, actually, it's 7:40 right now.
What is the agenda?
I'd like to have a quick straw poll. Option A will be reopening discussion for the on-campus events and kind of just seeing how many of those we can go through before 8. Second option would be to adjourn right now. So, straw poll, all in favor of option A, please raise your hand now.
I have to submit it when we do
Yeah.
the vote, because
Yeah.
I can keep up like
Same.
that.
All in favor of option A, which is continuing with on-campus events, please raise your hand now. All in favor of adjournment, please raise your hand now. All right, looks like we'll be continuing with on-campus events. What?
For 10 minutes, because then we're going into announcements.
I think
For the
that
agenda.
people were so confused about
Yeah, I didn't see any of them. Did you guys?
Wait, no.
Just that.
Because you were looking that
It's
way.
for 10 minutes, because we approved the agenda. We got 10 minutes, we are on.
Order. Alright, how do you want to be on
337.
campus? Justin will.
337.
337. Alright, Tori, do you have anything to say?
No. That's okay.
This is
See what
now.
student council.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this looks like kind of limited funding because it says helping people in the CEWA community bond and reconnect to build up a network of community. So I'm gonna move to strike 337.
Wait, hold on.
Question,
Sorry, I
did we
need-
strike food out?
Yes. No, we did not.
Did we make a vote on that?
Yeah.
The vote was to not strike and consider funding.
Oh, yeah, right. Okay.
Wait, oh, 337.
If you're on CWIT student council, it's listed as a general body meeting.
And method for helping people in CEWA community bond and reconnect to build up network of community. That seems kind of exclusionary. So I'm gonna move to strike
Well,
337.
just to give some clarification, I guess, affiliates aren't, anyone can be an affiliate. It's like, I don't know, just calling you know.
So I'd like to make an advisement on this. I think if, I did not agree with leaving food allergy awareness in. I think if you're gonna get into this process of groups are flat out telling you, yes, it's a general body meeting, but you're gonna go back and like pick and choose, it's a very dangerous game. I advise not going down that road, it's up to you all, but it's also a learning process. Empathy and as I've said many times, finding that middle ground between empathy and process. Follow your process with empathy. That's all I'm going to say. I will leave it at that.
Justin?
So, I kind of agree with like sort of the points that Tori and Michael brought up. When I wrote the legislation, like letting it be up to the finance board to determine general body meetings, I had more in mind that would be things that organizations would say are GBMs, but which the finance board did look at and say this has like characteristics of a GBM. Not necessarily like saying that whichever ones are outright saying that the GBMs mean like they completely like not immune to like being up more funded. So like I kind of like understand where Michael's coming from.
Nikki and Scott?
The person told me it was just not a GVM, so I was just like,
Scott?
The reasoning for the way I want to do it, I disagree with both Justin and Tori. I think we have all the information that we need in front of us, and we have to use our best judgment to determine if it's a GBM or not. We do this, we know what is a GBM and what isn't. It would be weird to leave things in when we know it's not a GBM. So I would like to use all the information in front of us to make our best decision, rather than just taking everybody's word who does this like once a semester.
Michael and Justin?
I think it's important. I also spoke to the treasurer of this club, and we spoke in depth for a long time at one of your spring budget planning meetings, and she communicated to me this was not a GBM, and she was making great strides to try to make it open to the entire campus community. And now, since we've brought up the issue of whether or not we're going to reconsider GBMs as that are listed as GBMs as actual GBMs or not, I think this is only fair game to be reconsidered as such, as not a GBM, because of the fact that there was information brought forth to me by the treasurer that it wasn't. So, I personally would, under normal circumstances, vote against it just because of the fact that on the sheet it says GBM, but now it's brought an issue up that there's no way to fairly assess whether or not these are GBMs or not. We're gonna have to now categorically go through every single one and try to, as a board, decide whether or not something is just a GBM or not, which I think is going to be a huge issue because it's not going to be unbiased. It's going to have a lot of bias, and I'm really upset about it. But hey, that's me.
Justin?
So I just want to like ask Cynthia, so when you talked to the treasurer, did you help him fill out there?
yeah, I opened every application. She logged into the survey market.
Did you ask her why she put in that?
It wasn't put in as a GBM.
So Survey Monkey would change it to GBM or?
No, I mean like she may have. I don't know. I could have been switched, I guess. But like she was describing the event to me as going through the application. It's not a GBM.
You saw it listed as managing, or you like just based on what she's telling you?
I looked through each application. I can't like 100% be like I remember exactly what was on the application.
I think this is a very, very dangerous path for us to consider.
So you just passed legislation that you're not gonna fund general body meetings, but now groups are telling you they're general body meetings and you're going to consider funding them. On paper, you're going against precedents,
That's incorrect.
but it says it's a general
Deemed by
body
the finance
meeting.
board.
No,
It
that
We're
doesn't
going
say
through
that, it
individually
doesn't say that
deemed
for
each
general
one.
body meetings, it says that for recruitment events. You
yeah.
didn't have deemed for in there for general body
To
meetings,
be
did you?
determined as a general body meeting by the finance board.
I just think you're going down a really rocky road,
Well,
and
actually,
some are
doesn't
gonna
say
be said
something about
yes.
finance board.
Some say yes, they're general body meetings and you're gonna cut them, and others say yes, and you're gonna consider them.
Actually, yeah, sorry, that's what I was wondering. The finance board shall not fund events determined to be general body meetings, not determined by the finance board.
So we can determine it by saying if they said
They
yes.
said to the thing, therefore, any reason person would be determined that this is a general body meeting.
Plus, part of the reason the whole question about if this is a GP amount, the application is to help us determine. So, I think this is dangerous territory and that we should probably like say no.
Ryan, then Michael, then I have a point next.
So I thought I was going down the similar path that you were, but I think we are in the process of determining whether they are or not. I think they indicate what they think, and then we determine based on their application.
I would like to side with Justin and Tori. I think this is super dangerous territory, and I think we're in an awkward position where we're gonna have to definitely go through again, budget by budget and try to figure out objectively whether or not it's general body meeting. Then it's gonna have to be questions about what can we consider, what information do we have to be considered about whether it's a general body meeting or not. And honestly speaking, I honestly really would not like to go down that path because I feel like it's one that's super dangerous, and I would really like to reconsider that previous vote, like honestly, basically.
Scott, go ahead.
I agree with both Ryan and Michael. I agree with Michael that we should reconsider it after going through it. But I also agree with Ryan that we've been interpreting the guiding docs directly, and I think what's more dangerous than undoing that precedent that we just started down is incorrectly applying the guiding docs and trying to use points of process to overrule each other. So I would like to take another vote and just categorically deny all of the people who listed as general body.
Alright, Zane?
Yeah, I was just going to point again that I don't like know what's going on because I feel like this is like, if there's something institutional where people just don't recognize, like what, like I feel like the budget in your situation, like I'm very confused by that as to why, like, if there's not a clear enough definition, if there's no like definition given, if we need to send out like an alert or something, but I think something definitely like, I'm in the mindset now that like they should be categorically denied when the GBM is placed there, but I think for the future, again, you can use system, but I think it needs to be made aware that like what a general body meeting is a definition like that, because I'm just like very kind of taken aback that like we are in this situation somehow, because I'm a little confused about why like if the information is out there or people just are submitting it to submit it, so I'm not sure.
I have a point, then we're gonna go to Justin and to Ryan. At this point too, I'd like to make sure that points being brought up are new points to avoid circular discussion, because we're definitely starting to head down that path. I think that when it comes to discrimination, we asked this question for a reason to get that back. I agree with Scott that our guiding docs probably aren't the same there. If you guys would like to make a vote on that today, that'll be the last thing that we end up doing today on that determination. So I'd like all new points and steps to be put into process. Personally, I would actually prefer to wait on a vote until Elise gets back, so that our full board is here to vote and make this decision and choose, because I definitely know that I would like to intend to vote on this one, and I'd rather have a full board, that way I have the right to vote, because currently with an odd number of vote members, the fact that I could create a tie means that I can't vote. That's a personal thing, point of preference. If you guys like to vote today, it's your decision.
So, from the information like that was said, like, if treasurer training is provided for them, like, that we don't fund general body meetings, and that they spoke with liaison before filling out this application, the fact that clubs still went on to, like, put this as general body, like, meetings, I don't think is, like, necessarily good on their end, and I don't think it would be problematic on our end to, like, categorically deny them. That's been, like, suggested. And I think, like, there was plenty of, like, room for them to, like, understand and, like, know, like, if this isn't a general body meeting, do not put that as a general body meeting. I think the treasure training and the fact that they spoke with liaisons, it's like the whole point of trying to avoid those mistakes. So I would favor, like, just categorically denying them.
Ryan, that's got
Well, if it helps, perhaps in the future, maybe not for this one, I was in the process of creating a document that was going to define general body meeting, and maybe it would help our thinking if I just kind of threw out a working definition of it. So this is what I had. The general body meeting be defined as the assembly of UMBC undergraduate student organizations meeting that admits only the members of the organization, and UMBC undergraduate student non-members are not invited to attend.
I would.
Yeah, that's not correct.
We do allow non-members to attend general body meetings. We don't allow non-members to like vote in elections or to hold like executive board positions. And non-members typically defined as like a graduate student,
Someone that has a membership requirement.
yeah. So that's just like a small piece to that definition. Yes.
I also don't think it will be relevant for this series of recruiting because there are budgets already in.
I actually find that I think one of the working definitions we have, which are finding, is basically a meeting of members of the organization to discuss things. Is probably the broadest you could get.
Discuss work.
To discuss things. It's got to
So just so treasure training's not like perceived as a be all end all, treasure training just kind of goes over everything. You know, I provide additional resources, additional workshops, office hours, and everything. So not everything was gone over in treasure training, and I want you guys to think that everybody is like completely educated just from treasure training. There are a variety of other resources that they're supposed to make use of in the creations of these documents.
Are there any discussion points? Would you guys like to move into a formal vote, or do you want to do a straw poll? Where does the board stand right now?
Can we go through with the straw poll?
Alright, let's go ahead and have a straw poll. Option A would be to categorically deny all funding for any event that the organization has listed as a general body meeting. Option B would be to look at these items on a case-by-case basis to determine which ones are general body meetings and which ones are not. So all in favor of option A, categorically denying all events listed as a general body meeting, please raise your hand now. Alright, and all in favor of option B, which is going through each individual event on a case-by-case basis to determine whether or not they're general body meeting, please raise your hand now. Alright, 5, 4, and 2 against, that's how our straw poll goes. We can easily take that if you'd like to apply that as a formal vote, or if you'd like to wait until the Tuesday meeting with Elise. Where you guys stand on that? Michael, go ahead.
I don't know what's changed, but the fact that Elise would not have majority in this, even if she was to vote against it, I think we should just apply it because of the fact that it would be counterproductive. Board time could be used more reasonably by moving forward and not bringing this up as another issue to hash out again, so.
Do you have something new you want to add?
I mean, we've been voting all night on things without Louise, and so I think to solve for this, like, as Mike says, like, a close vote would just be, like, counterproductive.
That's fair. I just want to at least put that option out there to you guys, in the interest of fairness. So, all in favor of ratifying the decision of the straw poll vote, please raise your hand now. All opposed? Alright, the straw poll vote will stand as a formal vote on the determination of general body meetings. That being said, are there any announcements?
You need to vote to change your thing on food allergy awareness center.
That's true, yeah. Oh, I thought,
It's encompassed before.
I was just asking, I didn't know if you need to like, okay.
yeah, with that being said, this precedent will apply ex post facto to all budgets being seen prior. Categorical will apply to any budgets preceding any vote that happened prior. So this will be a precedent that supersedes any prior vote in determination of general body meetings. Yes, Scott?
To end discussion on budgets for the spring 2020 semester on campus.
The chair will accept the motion. With that being said, are there any announcements? All right. With no announcements, I'd like to adjourn this meeting at 7:56 p.m. I recognize that I am present, Ilse is present, Justin is present, Brian is present, Michael is present, Zane is present, Nithya is present, I am present, Scott is present, along with ex officio members Tori and Courtney, along with our secretary. Anyone like to start past the gavel, but please wait until I click this beautiful button.
Okay, sorry, I'll